The dust devil swirled across Main Street, carrying with it the scent of sage and gunpowder that had become as much a part of Silver Creek as the weathered wooden buildings lining its single thoroughfare. Clara Bell stood behind the grimy window of the Broken Spur Saloon, watching the miniature tornado dance past before dissipating into the afternoon heat. Her calloused fingers absently traced the rim of a whiskey glass she'd been cleaning for the past 5 minutes, her mind elsewhere, always elsewhere these days. It had been 3 years since the massacre at Willow Springs. 3 years since she'd returned from the creek to find her family's homestead ablaze, their bodies arranged like broken dolls in the front yard. The image still haunted her dreams, transforming peaceful nights into battlegrounds where she fought invisible demons wearing the faces of the Black Vulture Gang. "Clara, these glasses ain't gonna clean themselves, girl." Big Tom's gravelly voice snapped her back to the present. The saloon owner stood behind the bar, his massive frame casting shadows across the scarred wooden counter. Despite his gruff demeanor, Tom had been the only one in Silver Creek willing to give her work when she'd stumbled into town, half dead from grief and exhaustion. "Sorry, Tom." She resumed her work, but her attention shifted when Sheriff Thomas burst through the swinging doors, his weathered face bearing news that sent a chill through the stifling air. "Another one," the sheriff announced to the scattered patrons. "Merchant wagon, about 15 miles north. Whole family, the Hendersons from back east. Didn't stand a chance." Clara's hand stilled. "How many?" Sheriff Thomas removed his hat, running fingers through thinning gray hair. 4 adults, 2 young'uns. Same pattern as always circled him like vultures. Took everything worth taking. Left their mark burned into the wagon side. The Black Vulture. Clara's jaw clenched so hard her teeth ached. The same symbol that had been carved into her father's chest. "When?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Yesterday. Near sunset. By the time we got word and rode out, weren't nothing but buzzards and—" He trailed off, noticing Clara's white knuckles gripping the bar's edge. "I'm sorry, Clara. I know it brings back—" "Did anyone see them, any survivors?" "None. Never are with the Black Vultures." The sheriff's shoulders sagged. 20 years wearing this badge, and I ain't never felt so useless. They're ghosts. Clara. Deadly ghosts that vanish into the desert like smoke." The saloon fell silent save for the creak of wood settling in the heat. Clara turned away, ostensibly to arrange bottles on the shelf, but really to hide the fury burning in her eyes. 3 years of waiting, watching, hoping for justice that never came. 3 years of the law failing her, failing everyone who crossed paths with those monsters. "Miss Clara, you best let it be." Old Pete wheezed from his corner table, his one good eye fixed on her with knowing sympathy. "Revenge is a poison that kills the one who drinks it." She whirled on him. "And what would you have me do, serve whiskey and smile while they butcher families across the territory?" "I'd have you leave," he said simply. "Your PA wouldn't want you consumed by this." "My pa's dead." The words tasted like ashes. "Along with my ma and little brother, they don't want anything anymore." Big Tom's meaty hand settled on her shoulder. "Take a break, girl. Get some air." Clara didn't argue. She untied her apron and stepped out into the blazing afternoon sun. Silver Creek stretched before her, a collection of false-fronted buildings, their paint peeling like sunburned skin. The church at the far end stood tall and white, a beacon of hope that felt more like mockery to her now. What kind of God allowed families to be slaughtered while their killers rode free? She walked past the general store where Mrs. Patterson swept her porch with mechanical precision, past the livery stable where the smell of hay and horse sweat hung thick. At the edge of town, she stopped at the small cemetery, her feet carrying her to 3 simple wooden crosses. William Bell, loving husband and father. Mary Bell, devoted wife and mother. Samuel Bell, cherished son. Clara knelt in the dust, her fingers tracing Samuel's name. He'd only been 12, still playing with wooden soldiers and dreaming of adventure. The black vultures had ended those dreams with the same casual cruelty they'd show to a lame horse. "I'm trying, Pa," she whispered. "But this town, these people, they've given up. They accept the killing like they accept the drought just another hardship to endure." Her voice cracked. "I can't accept it. I won't." The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her rise, hand instinctively moving to the small derringer hidden in her boot, a habit born of necessity in a land where women alone were seen as easy prey. A lone rider appeared through the heat shimmer, moving with the easy grace of someone born to the saddle. As he drew closer, Clara studied him with the wary assessment of someone who'd learned to read danger in a man's posture. Tall and lean, with a week's worth of stubble and clothes that had seen better days. Twin Colts rode low on his hips, tied down in the fashion of those who lived by the gun. But it was his eyes that held her attention, gray as winter storm clouds, carrying shadows that matched her own. He dismounted at the water trough near the cemetery entrance, letting his bay horse drink while he surveyed the town. His gaze lingered on her for a moment, and she lifted her chin defiantly, refusing to be the first to look away. "Ma'am." He touched the brim of his hat in greeting, his voice carrying the soft drawl of Texas. "Stranger." She kept her tone neutral, though something about him set her nerves on edge. Maybe it was the way he moved, all controlled power and coiled readiness. Or maybe it was the recognition she saw in his eyes, one damaged soul recognizing another. "Town seems quiet," he observed, producing a canteen and taking a long drink. "Quiet as a grave," she agreed, the irony not lost on either of them given their location. "You passing through?" "That's the plan." He studied her more openly now, taking in her worn dress, the steel in her spine, the way she stood like someone expecting trouble. Though plans have a way of changing. Not in Silver Creek, they don't. Nothing changes here except the body count. His eyes sharpened. "Indian trouble. Worse, men who choose to be monsters." The words came out harder than intended. "But you didn't ride all this way to hear our troubles, mister." "McGraw. James McGraw. Most folk call me Hunter." He secured his canteen back to the saddle. "And I've found trouble has a way of finding me whether I'm looking for it or not." "Then you've come to the right place. Silver Creek's got trouble to spare." She turned to go, then paused. "The Broken Spur's got rooms if you're needing a bed. Clean sheets and stronger whiskey than most towns this side of the Pecos." "Obliged for the information, Miss..." "Bell? Clara Bell." She met his gaze squarely. "And a word of advice. Mr. McGraw, whatever you're running from, it can't be worse than what's already here. Best to keep riding come morning." His smile held no humor. "Appreciate the concern, Miss Bell, but I stopped running from things a long time ago. These days, I'm more inclined to stand and fight." "Fighting's what gets people killed around here. So does running." He swung back into the saddle with fluid grace. "Reckon I'll take my chances with that whiskey you mentioned. Been a long trail." Clara watched him ride toward town, unease prickling her skin. There was something about James McGraw that didn't fit the pattern of drifters who usually passed through. He wore his guns like a man who knew how to use them, carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd faced death and walked away. But there was more a weariness in his eyes that spoke of too many battles, too much loss. She'd seen that look before, in her own reflection. Back at the Broken Spur, the afternoon crowd had grown. Cowboys from the surrounding ranches, a few merchants, and the usual collection of drifters and gamblers. Clara retied her apron and resumed her duties, but her attention kept drifting to the door. When McGraw finally entered, conversation stuttered to a halt. He surveyed the room with those storm cloud eyes, cataloging exits, threats, and possibilities in a single sweep. Professional, Clara thought. Whatever else he was, James McGraw was a professional gunman. He chose a table with its back to the wall and a clear view of both doors, another professional habit. Clara approached with a bottle and glass, noting how he kept his hands visible, making no sudden moves that might be misinterpreted. "Whiskey." "That'll do fine." He watched her pour, then asked, "How long has the Black Vulture gang been operating in these parts?" The bottle jerked in her hand, splashing whiskey on the scarred table. "You know about them." "Heard talk in Adobe Flats. Seems they've carved out quite a reputation from here to the Rio Grande." His eyes never left her face. "Also heard they killed a family near here a few years back. Homesteader's named Bell." Clara set the bottle down carefully, fighting the tremor in her hands. "You heard right. I'm sorry for your loss." The simple sincerity in his voice nearly undid her. She'd heard variations of those words countless times, usually dripping with pity or hollow sympathy. But McGraw spoke like someone who understood grief's weight, who'd carried his own burden of loss across too many miles. "Save your sympathy for someone who needs it." She turned to go, but his next words stopped her. "I'm not offering sympathy. Miss Bell, I'm offering understanding." He raised his glass in a small salute. "To the ghosts that ride with us, may they find peace, even if we can't." Clara found herself studying him anew. "You lose family to them, too." "Not to the Black Vultures, but men just like them, during the war and after." He took a slow sip. "Border raiders, Comancheros, men who forgot what it means to be human. I've spent considerable time sending such men to their judgment. For money. Sometimes for reasons that can't be counted in coin." He met her gaze directly. "I won't pretend to be a good man, Miss Bell, but there are worse things to be than a killer of killers." Before Clara could respond, the saloon doors burst open again. This time, it was young Bobby Martinez, one of the Mexican vaqueros from the Lazy J Ranch. His face was flushed with hard riding, his eyes wide with fear. "Señorita Clara Sheriff Thomas." He gulped air, struggling to speak. "The Black Vultures, they hit the Jameson Ranch, Senior Jameson. He is dead, the ranch. It burns." The saloon erupted in shouts and curses. Sheriff Thomas struggled to restore order while Bobby provided details. Clara stood frozen, her mind racing. The Jameson Ranch was only 10 miles out closer than the gang had ever struck before. They were getting bolder, more confident. "How many riders?" McGraw's calm voice cut through the chaos. Bobby turned to him, taking in the tied-down guns and hard face. 8, maybe 10. Senor, they ride north, toward the canyon lands." "When?" 2 hours ago, maybe less." McGraw stood, settling his hat. "Fresh trail, then. Sheriff, you organizing a posse?" Sheriff Thomas looked older than his 60 years. "Son, I've organized 5 posses in 3 years. Lost good men each time and never got within shooting distance of those devils. They know every hidden trail, every box canyon. Pursuing them is suicide. So is sitting here waiting for them to hit again." McGraw's voice carried quiet authority. "Miss Bell was right. Nothing changes here. Maybe it's time someone changed that." "And you're volunteering?" The sheriff's tone mixed skepticism with desperate hope. "I'm considering it." McGraw's gaze found Clara across the room. "Though I'd need a good reason to get involved in what isn't my fight." Clara stepped forward, her decision made before she fully realized it. "I'll give you a reason. Help track them, and I'll pay you everything I've saved. $300. "Clara, no," Big Tom started, but she cut him off. "It's my money. Tom, my choice." She faced McGraw squarely. "You said you're a killer of killers. Prove it." McGraw studied her for a long moment, and she had the uncomfortable feeling he was seeing straight through to her soul. "Keep your money, Miss Bell. Some things shouldn't be bought and sold." He adjusted his gun belt, the gesture unconsciously graceful. "Sheriff, I'll ride with your posse, but we do this my way. No heroics, no glory-seeking. We track, we observe, and we only engage if the advantage is ours. And if it isn't, someone called out. Then we wait. The black vultures have survived this long because they're smart and careful. To beat them, we need to be smarter and more careful. His smile was sharp as a blade. Lucky for you, I've had considerable practice at both. As men scrambled to organize, Clara caught McGraw's arm. Why? He looked down at her hand on his sleeve, then up to her face. Because I've been where you are, Miss Bell, living with ghosts, burning for justice that never comes. Sometimes a man needs to do something decent, if only to remember he still can. I'm riding with you. No. The refusal was immediate and absolute. You don't give me orders, Mr. McGraw. This isn't about orders. It's about staying alive. His voice gentled slightly. You want justice for your family. I understand that. But getting yourself killed won't bring them back. Neither will hiding behind a bar, serving whiskey to cowards who've given up. The words exploded from her, drawing stares from the organizing posse. 3 years I've waited for anyone to stand up to them. Now when someone finally does, you expect me to sit here like a proper lady? I expect you to use the intelligence God gave you. He shot back. You're not trained for this kind of work. You'd be a liability, not an asset. I can shoot. My PA taught me. Shooting cans off a fence isn't the same as shooting men who shoot back. He pulled free of her grip, but his eyes held something that might have been respect. Stay here, Miss Bell. Stay alive. That's the best thing you can do for your family's memory. He strode out before she could argue further, leaving Clara standing in the middle of the saloon with fury and frustration warring in her chest. Around her, men checked weapons and mounted horses, the first real resistance to the Black Vulture gang in years, and she was expected to stay behind like a helpless child. He's right, you know, Big Tom said quietly. This isn't woman's work. Clara rounded on him. Was it woman's work when they tortured my mother, when they made her watch while they... She couldn't finish, the memories too raw even after 3 years. Tom's face creased with sympathy. I know, girl, but getting yourself killed won't change what happened. Maybe not, but at least I'd have tried. At least I'd have fought back instead of accepting it like everyone else in this godforsaken town. She stalked to the window, watching the posse form up outside. McGraw sat his bay horse with easy confidence, speaking quietly to Sheriff Thomas. Even from here, she could see the change in the men around him. His presence had given them something they'd lacked: hope, perhaps, or at least the possibility of action instead of passive acceptance. As if sensing her gaze, McGraw looked toward the saloon. For a moment, their eyes met through the dusty glass. Then he touched his hat brim in farewell and turned his horse north, leading the posse into the gathering dusk. Clara watched until they disappeared into the heat shimmer, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. 3 years of waiting, of planning, of dreaming about revenge. And when the moment finally came, she was left behind like excess baggage. No, she whispered, her mind made up. Not this time. The sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of blood and gold. Somewhere out there, the Black Vulture gang rode with the confidence of predators who'd never met a greater predator. Somewhere out there, a mysterious gunman named James McGraw led a group of ordinary men against extraordinary evil. And somewhere in between, Clara Bell would find her place in this story, whether the men of Silver Creek liked it or not. The ghosts that rode with her demanded nothing less. The moon hung like a silver dollar in the black velvet sky when Clara slipped out the back door of the Broken Spur. She'd changed into her brother Samuel's old clothes shirt, trousers, and worn boots that she'd kept hidden in her room. Her hair was tucked under a wide-brimmed hat, and her father's Colt .45 weighed heavy on her hip. She'd given the posse an hour's head start, enough time for Big Tom to assume she'd retired for the night. The livery stable was dark and quiet, old Moses, the stable hand, snoring in the hayloft. Clara saddled her mare, Buttercup, with practiced efficiency, wrapping the hooves in cloth to muffle their departure. The trail north was clear in the moonlight, marked by the recent passage of many horses. Clara urged Buttercup into an easy lope, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. For 3 years she'd been trapped behind that bar, serving whiskey to men who'd given up. Tonight, she was finally taking action. An hour out of town, the trail split. Clara dismounted, studying the ground in the pale light. The main body of tracks continued north, but a single set of hoofprints veered west toward Skeleton Ridge. Her blood chilled as she recognized the distinctive gait of McGraw's bay he'd separated from the posse. "Damn fool," she muttered, though admiration mixed with her irritation. He was circling around, probably planning to scout the gang's position from higher ground. It was exactly what her father would have done: smart, strategic, and dangerous as hell for a man alone. Clara followed McGraw's trail, pushing Buttercup harder now. The landscape grew rougher, transformed by moonlight into a maze of shadows and silver-touched stone. She was so focused on tracking that she almost missed the soft whistle that froze her blood. "That's far enough, Miss Bell." McGraw materialized from behind a cluster of boulders, his Colt drawn but not quite aimed at her, even in the darkness. She could see his expression, a mixture of anger and something that might have been admiration. "How did you know it was me?" "Your mare's got a distinctive gait, favors her left front leg just a touch. Noticed it when you were at the cemetery." He holstered his weapon with a disgusted sound. "What in the hell do you think you're doing?" "Same thing you are, hunting the men who killed my family. Dressed like a boy and riding alone in hostile territory." He stepped closer, and she caught the scent of leather and gunpowder. "I gave you credit for having more sense." "And I gave you credit for being different from the others," she shot back. "But you're just like them, thinking women should sit quietly while men handle everything. This isn't about what women should or shouldn't do." His voice was low, intense. "This is about experience. Have you ever killed a man? Miss Bell? Ever had someone trying their damnedest to kill you?" "No, but..." "No buts. First time you take a life, it changes you. First time someone tries to take yours, it changes you more." He moved past her to check the trail ahead. "Go home, please." The "please" caught her off guard. It sounded like it cost him something to say it. "I can't." She dismounted, standing her ground. "Every night for 3 years, I've seen their faces, heard their screams. If I don't do something, if I don't at least try, I'll go mad." McGraw turned back to her, and in the moonlight she saw something shift in his expression. Mad might be preferable to what you'll become if you follow this path. "Like you." "Exactly like me." The words were bitter. "A killer who's so good at death he's forgotten how to live. Is that what your family would want for you?" "My family's dead. They don't want anything." She met his gaze steadily. "But while they lived, they taught me to fight for what's right, to stand up to evil, not hide from it." A long moment passed, the desert silence broken only by the distant howl of a coyote. Finally, McGraw sighed, a sound of defeat. "Can you follow orders without question, even if they go against every instinct you have?" Hope flared in her chest. "Yes." "Can you remain silent for hours if needed? Control your emotions when we find them? Not let revenge make you careless?" "I've controlled my emotions for 3 years. I can manage a few more hours." He studied her, those storm cloud eyes seeming to weigh her soul. "If you slow me down, I'll tie you to a rock and collect you on the way back. If you disobey a direct order, I'll knock you unconscious myself. Understood?" "Understood." "Then mount up and lose the hat. It makes you a better target." They rode in silence, McGraw leading them through terrain that would have been challenging in daylight. Clara found herself impressed by his skill, the way he read the land like others might read a book. When he finally signaled a halt near a cluster of wind-carved rocks, she could see the glow of campfires in the valley below. "Black vultures," she whispered. He produced a pair of field glasses. studying the camp for long minutes before passing them to her. 8 men, 3 on guard, 5 around the fires. No sign of prisoners, so the Jameson women are probably dead. Clara's hands trembled as she took the glasses. The camp jumped into focus, and her breath caught. There, illuminated by firelight, was a face burned into her memory scarred. Cruel, with dead eyes that had watched without emotion as her family died. "Jake Morrison," she breathed. "He's their segundo. He's the one who—" Her voice broke. "Who what?" McGraw's tone was carefully neutral. "Who made my father watch while they hurt my mother? Who laughed when Samuel tried to protect her?" The glasses shook in her grip. "Who carved that damn vulture into my father's chest while he was still breathing?" McGraw gently took the glasses from her. "And the others?" "I don't know. It was dark, and I was—" She swallowed hard. "I was hiding in the root cellar. Pa made me promise to stay hidden no matter what I heard." "Smart man." McGraw continued his surveillance. "This isn't their main camp. Not enough horses. No supply wagons. Probably a temporary site while they scout their next target." "The posse is riding into an ambush about 5 miles north. The tracks they're following lead straight to Dead Man's Box Canyon with one way in, no way out." He lowered the glasses. "Sheriff Thomas is experienced enough to spot it, but in the dark, with men eager for action." "We have to warn them." "No, we have to decide which opportunity to take." His voice was coldly practical. "Try to warn the posse and lose our chance at these 8, or take what we can get." "That's not a choice. Those men will die." "Men die every day. The question is whether their deaths accomplish anything." He faced her fully. "This is what I meant, Miss Bell. These are the decisions that eat away at your soul. Save the innocent or punish the guilty. There's no good answer, just choices you have to live with." Clara stared at him, seeing the weight of similar decisions in the lines around his eyes. "What would you do if I wasn't here?" "Take the 8. The posse made their choice when they rode out. These men made theirs when they started killing innocents." He paused. "But you are here, and it's your family they destroyed. Your choice to make." The responsibility settled on her shoulders like a mountain. Below, Jake Morrison laughed at something, the sound carrying on the night wind, the same laugh she'd heard as her mother screamed, the same laugh that echoed in her nightmares. "How?" she asked quietly. 8 men, all killers. How do we take them?" A smile ghosted across McGraw's face, the first genuine one she'd seen. "Carefully, Miss Bell. Very carefully." He outlined his plan with economy, sketching diagrams in the dirt. It was brilliant in its simplicity, relying on misdirection and the gang's own overconfidence. Clara found herself wondering how many times he'd done this, how many camps he'd stalked in the darkness. "Questions?" "Just one. Why, separate from the posse, you could have led them away from the ambush?" "Because Sheriff Thomas wouldn't have listened. He's a good man, but he's desperate. Desperation makes men stupid." McGraw checked his weapons with mechanical precision. "Besides, I work better alone." "You're not alone now." "No," he agreed, something unreadable in his voice. "I'm not." They left the horses tied well back from the camp, approaching on foot. Clara's heart hammered so loud she was certain the guards would hear it. But McGraw moved like a ghost, and she forced herself to match his pace, placing her feet where his had been. The first guard died without a sound, McGraw's knife finding the gap between collar and skull with practiced ease. Clara bit down on the bile that rose in her throat, remembering her bold words about being ready for this. The reality was far different than her imagination. The second guard presented a problem he was too far from cover, too exposed. McGraw studied the situation, then turned to Clara with a question in his eyes. She nodded, understanding. "Help!" She let panic color her voice, stumbling into the guard's line of sight. "Please, Signor, my horse threw me. I'm lost." The guard straightened, gun half raised. "What the hell?" McGraw rose behind him like an avenging angel. This time Clara watched, forcing herself not to look away as life left the man's eyes. This was what she'd chosen. This was the price of vengeance. The third guard was younger, barely older than Samuel would have been. When he saw McGraw approaching, he opened his mouth to shout a warning. Clara's gun was in her hand before conscious thought, the shot splitting the night like thunder. The camp erupted. Men rolled from their blankets, grabbing for weapons. McGraw was already moving, his Colt speaking death with methodical precision. Clara found herself firing at shadows and muzzle flashes. Her father's lessons coming back: squeeze, don't jerk. Breathe between shots. Make each bullet count. It was over in moments that felt like hours. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the crackling of the dying fires. Clara stood among the bodies, gun still raised, unable to process the transition from violence to stillness. "Clara," McGraw's voice came from very close. "It's done. Lower the gun." She obeyed mechanically, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Are they all?" "7 down." His voice carried a warning. "Morrison's missing." The shot came from the darkness beyond the fire, the bullet tugging at Clara's shirt as she dove sideways. McGraw was already moving, pushing her behind a boulder as more shots peppered their position. Well, Morrison's voice carried clearly, tinged with that remembered cruelty. "James McGraw. Should have known when things went sideways it'd be you stirring the pot. And you brought a friend, how touching." "Been a while. Jake," McGraw called back, his voice conversational. "Still hiding behind innocent folks' misery. Still pretending you're better than the rest of us." Morrison laughed. That same sound from Clara's nightmares. "We're all killers here. McGraw. Only difference is I'm honest about enjoying it." Clara started to move, but McGraw's hand on her arm stopped her. He shook his head slightly, then called out again. "Maybe so, but there's one big difference between us. Jake." "What's that?" "I'm better at it." The shot that followed was impossible, McGraw firing without looking, his bullet ricocheting off a rock to catch Morrison as he shifted position. The outlaw stumbled into the firelight, clutching his shoulder, gun wavering between them. "Clara Bell." Morrison's eyes found her, widening with recognition. "William's girl? My, haven't you grown up pretty? Your ma was pretty too, before—" Clara's shot cut off whatever vileness he'd planned to spew. Morrison looked down at the spreading red stain on his chest with something like surprise. "Guess the apple doesn't fall far?" he wheezed, dropping to his knees. "Your PA." He begged at the end. Begged me to spare your ma. To spare the boy. Want to know what I said? No? Clara walked closer, her gun steady now. "I want you to die knowing you failed. My family is gone, but their killer is dead. That's enough." Morrison tried to speak again, but only blood came out. He toppled forward into the dirt, his dead eyes reflecting the firelight. Clara stared down at him, waiting for the satisfaction, the closure she'd dreamed of. Instead, she felt empty, hollow. The monster from her nightmares was just a man, and killing him hadn't brought her family back. "First time's the hardest," McGraw said quietly, standing beside her. "Gets easier after that. That's the real tragedy." She turned to him, seeing new shadows in his eyes, or perhaps just noticing ones that had always been there. "Is that supposed to comfort me?" "No, it's supposed to warn you." He began checking the bodies with professional detachment. "You did well tonight, better than most on their first real fight. Your father taught you right." "I don't feel well. I feel—" She couldn't finish, didn't have words for the mixture of satisfaction and revulsion churning in her stomach. "You feel alive," McGraw said simply, "and guilty for it. 7 men are dead, men who probably had families, maybe even children. But you're breathing and they're not, and part of you is fiercely glad of it." She nodded, disturbed by his accuracy. "Does it ever stop the guilt?" "No, you just learn to carry it better." He found what he was looking for, a leather pouch on Morrison's body. Inside were papers, maps, and what looked like a schedule. But this might help. Looks like Morrison was planning something special. Clara read over his shoulder, her blood chilling. The papers outlined plans for a coordinated series of raids, targeting specific families throughout the territory. Her own family's name was crossed out, but she recognized others: the Jamesons, the Hendersons, all recent victims. "This isn't random violence," she breathed. "They're working for someone. These families, they all filed claims on the same stretch of land along the river." McGraw's expression darkened. Land that becomes very valuable if the rightful owners are dead and can't prove their claims. He pocketed the papers. "This changes things. We're not just dealing with outlaws, someone's using them to clear territory." A distant sound made them both freeze hoofbeats. Many of them. Approaching fast. McGraw grabbed Clara's arm, pulling her toward the horses. "Time to go! That'll be the rest of the gang coming to check on their friends." They rode hard, taking a different route back toward Silver Creek. Dawn was breaking as they finally slowed, the familiar outline of the town visible in the distance. Clara felt like she'd aged years in a single night. "What now?" she asked, exhaustion making her voice hoarse. "Now we use what we found. Someone in Silver Creek or nearby is behind this. Someone respectable, with access to land records and enough money to pay the Black Vultures." McGraw's smile was predatory. "Morrison's dead, but he gave us something better than closure. Miss Bell, he gave us a trail." "And you'll follow it?" "We'll follow it." He reined in at the edge of town, studying her in the growing light. "You've got sand, Clara Bell, more than I gave you credit for. If you want to see this through, really see it through, then we do it as partners. Equal stakes, equal risks." "Why?" she had to ask. "You could handle this alone. Why take on a partner you don't need?" McGraw was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. "Maybe because I'm tired of working alone. Maybe because you remind me of someone I used to know, someone who believed justice was worth fighting for, before the fighting took everything else away." He met her eyes directly. "Or maybe because everyone deserves a chance to face their demons. You faced yours tonight. Least I can do is help you face the rest." Clara extended her hand like a man would, firm and direct. "Partners. Then—" His grip was calloused, strong, and surprisingly gentle. "Partners, though you might want to sneak back to your room before the town wakes up. Wouldn't do for Silver Creek's respectable folk to know what Clara Bell was really up to last night." She smiled her first genuine smile in longer than she could remember. "Let them wonder. I'm done hiding who I am." As she rode down Main Street, still dressed in her brother's clothes with gun smoke in her hair, Clara saw curtains twitch and faces peer out. Let them look. Let them gossip. The scared girl who'd served their whiskey was gone, replaced by something harder and more dangerous. 7 men were dead by her hand and McGraw's. Morrison's blood was on her conscience, and she felt its weight, but she also felt something else: purpose, for the first time in 3 years. She had more than grief and anger. She had a direction, a partner, and a mystery to solve. The Black Vultures had taken everything from her. Now, with McGraw's help, she would take everything from them, including the truth about who held their leashes. Justice might come at a price, but after last night, Clara Bell was prepared to pay it in full. The kerosene lamp cast dancing shadows across the walls of Clara's small room above the saloon. She sat cross-legged on her bed. The papers from Morrison's body spread before her like pieces of a grim puzzle. McGraw occupied the single chair, his long legs stretched out, looking more relaxed than any man had a right to after the night they'd had. "Tell me about your family," he said quietly, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. Not how they died. How they lived. Clara looked up, surprised by the question. Why? Because knowing what we're fighting for matters as much as knowing what we're fighting against. He pulled out a thin cigar, then thought better of it. And because you're about to walk deeper into darkness, you should remember the light you're trying to protect. She set down the paper she'd been studying, a list of names with dates beside them. A ledger of planned death. He was everything. Strong, gentle, funny. He could make Ma laugh even when the crops failed or the well ran dry. He'd tell these stories at night, about knights and dragons, but set them in Texas instead of England. A romantic. A dreamer, Clara corrected, smiling at the memory. He believed in the promise of the West, land of his own, a future for his children. Ma was the practical one. She kept us fed and clothed, while Pa kept us hoping. And your brother? Samuel was 12, all knees and elbows and dreams bigger than the sky. Wanted to be a lawman, of all things. Used to practice his quick draw with a carved wooden gun. Her voice caught. He died trying to protect Ma, 12 years old, and he stood between her and those monsters with nothing but courage and that toy gun. McGraw was quiet for a moment. Brave boy. Foolish boy, Clara whispered. If he'd hidden like Pa told him, then he wouldn't have been the brother you remember with such pride. McGraw leaned forward, his gray eyes serious. Don't dishonor his choice by wishing he'd been a coward. Is that what you tell yourself about the people you've lost? A shadow crossed his face. I tell myself a lot of things. Miss Bell, some of them might even be true. He stood abruptly, moving to the window. Sheriff Thomas made it back, lost 3 men in the ambush, but it could have been worse. Clara joined him at the window, watching the dejected posse dismount in front of the sheriff's office. We should have warned them. And revealed our position, lost our chance at Morrison. He shook his head. You made the right choice, even if it doesn't feel that way. Everything I was taught says we should have saved those men. Everything you were taught was for a civilized world. This isn't that world. He turned from the window. Speaking of which, we need to talk about those papers. The pattern is clear. Someone's systematically removing claim holders along Willow Creek. Question is, who profits? Clara returned to the documents, her analytical mind taking over. The claims would revert to the territory, then go up for auction. Anyone with ready cash and advanced knowledge could buy up a fortune in water rights and grazing land. McGraw picked up one of the papers. This schedule shows 2 more families targeted in the next week, the Millers and the Washburns. I know them. Good people. The Millers have 3 daughters. Youngest is only 5. Clara's jaw clenched. We have to warn them. We will, but first, we need to find out who's behind this. Otherwise, we're just delaying the inevitable. He studied her in the lamplight. You up for some detective work? What kind? The kind that requires a dress instead of trousers. The land office opens in an hour. A concerned citizen checking on her late family's claim might learn all sorts of interesting things. Clara grimaced. I hate playing helpless female. Then don't. Play smart female instead. Ask the right questions. Notice the wrong reactions. His smile held a hint of mischief. Besides, you need to maintain your cover. Clara Bell can't suddenly turn into a gunfighter without raising suspicions. She knew he was right, but it grated. After last night, after facing her demons and coming out alive, the thought of returning to her role as mere saloon girl felt like stepping backward. Fine, but tonight we visit the Millers and Washburns. See if we can't rearrange the Black Vulture's schedule. He moved toward the door, then paused. Get some rest first. You look like hell. Charming. You really know how to compliment a lady. I know how to keep a partner alive, he corrected. Exhaustion makes you slow. Slow gets you dead. His expression softened slightly. You did good last night. Clara, your PA would be proud. He was gone before she could respond. leaving her alone with the ghosts and the evidence. Clara touched the list of names again, her finger stopping at her own family's entry. William Bell eliminated. The casual cruelty of it, reducing her entire world to a single line in a ledger, made her stomach burn. She forced herself to wash and change, donning the modest blue dress she wore for church and other respectable occasions. The woman in the mirror looked different somehow, same features, but harder eyes, a tighter set to her jaw. She wondered if others would see it too, this transformation from victim to something else entirely. The land office was busy when she arrived, full of men filing claims and arguing over boundaries. Clara waited patiently, playing the part of grieving daughter, until she reached the clerk's desk. "Miss Bell." Horace Pritchard greeted her with oily sympathy. "How may I assist you today?" "I wanted to check on my family's claim," she said softly. "There have been inquiries." "Inquiries?" His watery eyes sharpened with interest. "From whom, may I ask?" "That's what concerns me. Mr. Pritchard," anonymous letters suggesting the claim might be invalid. She let worry color her voice. "With all these terrible attacks lately, I fear someone might be trying to steal what little I have left." Pritchard's Adam's apple bobbed nervously. "I assure you, Miss Bell, all claims are handled with utmost propriety. Your family's holdings were perfectly legal." "Of course, I didn't mean to imply otherwise." She leaned forward conspiratorially. "It's just, with the Hendersons and now the Jamesons, they had claims near ours." "Didn't they?" "Well, yes, but—" "And I heard the Millers received threats. Their land borders the creek, too, doesn't it?" She watched his face carefully, noting the sweat that beaded his upper lip despite the morning cool. "Where did you hear about threats to the Millers?" His voice pitched higher. "Oh, Martha Miller and I sew together sometimes. She mentioned some concerning encounters." Clara dabbed at imaginary tears. "I'm just so frightened. Mr. Pritchard, what if whoever is behind these attacks comes for me next?" "There's no evidence anyone is behind anything," Pritchard said quickly. Too quickly. "These are random acts of violence, nothing more." "Of course," Clara agreed, filing away his nervousness. "Still, I wonder if I should sell, get away from all these memories. Do you know anyone looking to buy land along Willow Creek?" His eyes lit up with poorly concealed avarice. "Well, as it happens, I do know of a party interested in consolidating holdings in that area. For development purposes, you understand. Progress and all that." "Oh, anyone I might know." "I'm not at liberty to say, but I could make inquiries, discreetly, of course." He leaned closer, and Clara fought not to recoil from his breath. The price might be quite generous, considering the difficulties in the region.
"How generous?"
"Perhaps 30 cents on the dollar of its true value, given the circumstances." Clara bit back her fury. Her family's land was worth thousands, and this vulture was talking about hundreds. I'll need to think about it. "Don't think too long, Miss Bell. The offer might not stand if more unfortunate events occur." The threat was barely veiled. Clara stood, her hands trembling with rage rather than the fear she projected. "Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. You've been most helpful." She left the land office, her mind racing. Pritchard was involved, but he was too weak to be the mastermind. He was a tool, like the black vultures themselves, but whose tool? McGraw was waiting in the alley beside the general store. He'd changed clothes, now looking like a traveling merchant rather than a gunfighter. "Learn anything?" "Pritchard nearly wet himself when I mentioned the Millers getting threats. He also offered to buy my land for 30 cents on the dollar." She related the entire conversation, watching McGraw's expression darken. Anonymous buyer willing to pay cash for distressed properties. Classic land grab scheme. He rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "We need to know who Pritchard reports to." "How do we find out?" Follow the money. Pritchard's too fond of whiskey and cards to be sitting on cash. Check who he owes. Who's been paying his debts lately? McGraw glanced at the son. But first, we need to warn the Millers and Washburns. Can you get away tonight? Tom won't like it, but yes, he's been walking on eggshells around me since this morning anyway. She smiled grimly. Apparently, riding into town in men's clothes covered in trail dust causes talk. Imagine that. McGraw's eyes held amusement. Meet me at Skeleton Ridge at sunset. Bring supplies for overnight. We'll need to split up to reach both families. Split up. The thought of facing the darkness alone made her stomach clench. You take the Washburns, they know you, trust you. I'll handle the Millers. He must have seen her uncertainty because he added, You proved yourself last night. Trust that proof. The rest of the day crawled by. Clara served drinks and deflected questions about her midnight ride with practiced ease, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying the conversation with Pritchard, planning what she'd say to convince the Washburns to leave their home. Big Tom finally cornered her during a lull. Girl, what have you gotten yourself into? Justice, Tom. Something this town forgot existed. Justice, he snorted. That what they're calling it when a saloon girl rides out with a known gunman and comes back looking like she's seen the elephant. 7 of them are dead, Clara said quietly. Including Jake Morrison. The man who tortured my family is burning in hell where he belongs. Call it what you want. Tom's eyes widened. You killed... McGraw did most of it, but yes, I pulled my weight. She met his gaze steadily. And I'll keep pulling it until they're all dead or gone. This ain't you. Clara, you're a good girl, not a what a killer, she laughed bitterly. Maybe that's exactly what I am. Tom, maybe that's what they made me the night they took everything from me. He reached for her, but she stepped away. Clara, I need to go. The Washburns are in danger. She untied her apron. I'll be back tomorrow. Maybe. And if you're not... She paused at the door. Then remember, I finally did something besides pour whiskey and pretend everything was fine. Skeleton Ridge looked different in daylight, less sinister, more sad. McGraw was already there. 2 horses saddled and ready. He'd packed light but efficient, bedrolls and supplies distributed evenly. Any trouble getting away? Just Tom trying to save my soul. She swung into the saddle, noting he'd brought her a split skirt for riding. Too late for that, I think. Souls are tougher than you'd think, McGraw said. Take a lot of killing before they're truly dead. He handed her extra ammunition. The Washburns' place is about 8 miles northwest. What's your relationship with them? Alice Washburn taught me to read. Continued my education after Ma died. Clara's throat tightened. She's the closest thing to family I have left. Then she'll listen to you. Make her understand this isn't random violence. Someone wants their land, and they'll kill to get it. What if they don't believe me? Then you've done what you can. Can't save people who won't be saved. He touched her shoulder briefly. Watch your back trail. If the vultures are monitoring their targets, they might have scouts out. They parted ways at the crossroads. McGraw heading north while Clara turned west. The familiar landscape felt different now. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every bird call might signal danger. She found herself checking her gun, testing its weight in her hand. The Washburn Ranch appeared peaceful in the fading light. Smoke rose from the chimney, and Clara could see Alice's garden, still green despite the summer heat. For a moment, she hesitated. Once she rode down there with her warning, this peace would shatter. Clara, a voice called from the barn. Tom Washburn emerged, rifle in hand but lowered. What brings you out here? Trouble, Mr. Washburn. Bad trouble coming your way. She dismounted, hands visible and empty. Is Alice inside? You both need to hear this. Alice Washburn was a handsome woman in her 50s. Her gray-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun. She greeted Clara with a warm hug that nearly broke the younger woman's composure. "My dear, you look exhausted. Sit, let me get you some tea." "There's no time." Clara pulled out the papers she'd copied from Morrison's stash. "The Black Vulture Gang, they're not random killers. Someone's paying them to eliminate landholders along Willow Creek. You're next on their list." Tom Washburn studied the documents, his weathered face growing grimmer. "This is madness. Who would—" "Someone who wants your water rights. Someone with money and influence." Clara leaned forward urgently. "You need to leave. Tonight. Go to town. Stay with friends. Anything but remain here. Leave our home." Alice's voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "Clara, this is everything we've built." "It's just land and wood. Your lives matter more." Clara caught Alice's hands. "Please, I've already lost one family. I can't lose you, too." The older couple exchanged a long look. 30 years of marriage allowing silent communication. Finally. Tom nodded. "We'll pack what we can carry, but where will we go?" "I have a friend in Silver Creek. Abigail Foster, she runs the boarding house. She'll take you in." Clara helped them gather essentials, her urgency infecting them. Within an hour, they were ready to leave. "What about you?" Alice asked as they prepared to depart. "If there's truly a conspiracy—" "I have protection." Clara touched her gun. "And I have help. Someone who knows how to fight back." "The gunman, everyone's talking about McGraw." Tom's expression was troubled. "Clara, men like that—" "Men like that are exactly what we need right now." She embraced them both. "Go, stay in town until you hear it's safe." She watched them disappear into the darkness, then settled in to wait. If the Black Vultures came tonight, they'd find the nest empty, but they might leave tracks, clues to follow. The fire in the ranch house had burned to embers when she heard them horses approaching from the south. Clara slipped out the back, positioning herself behind the chicken coop with a clear view of the yard. 5 riders materialized from the darkness, moving with predatory confidence. They dismounted casually, clearly expecting no resistance. Clara recognized one from the camp, a thin man with dead eyes who'd been cleaning his gun by the fire. "Spread out," he ordered. "Make it look random but thorough. Boss wants no survivors, no witnesses." They moved toward the house, and Clara had to bite her lip to keep from shooting. Let them find it empty. Let them wonder. Let them make mistakes. The thin man kicked in the door, disappearing inside. Shouts of frustration followed. "It's empty! They're gone!" "Check the barn, the outbuildings. They might be hiding." Clara eased back further into the shadows. 5 men, spread out, searching. She could take one, maybe 2 before they pinpointed her location. But then what the math didn't work. A rifle shot split the night, and one of the vultures spun and fell. McGraw. Clara realized with relief. He'd finished with the Millers and come to back her up. The remaining outlaws dove for cover, shouting and returning fire at shadows. Clara used the confusion to move, circling toward the barn. Another rifle shot dropped a second man, this one trying to reach the horses. "It's McGraw!" someone shouted. "That bastard from the camp!" Forget the house mount up. Clara stepped from behind the barn, her coat steady. "Leaving so soon?" The thin man spun toward her, his gun rising. Clara shot him twice, center mass, watching him crumple without satisfaction. This was necessity, not vengeance. The last 2 outlaws made it to their horses, spurring hard toward the horizon. McGraw emerged from the darkness, rifle still smoking. "Let them go," he said, joining her. "They'll report back that the targets were warned. Might make whoever's behind this nervous enough to make mistakes." "The Washburns are safe? The Millers?" "On their way to relatives in Fort Worth." He studied the bodies. "Recognize any of them?" "Just the thin one. He was at the camp." Clara holstered her gun, suddenly exhausted. "We saved them. Tonight, we actually saved people." Tonight, but there'll be other nights, other targets. McGraw's expression was grim. This is bigger than we thought. Clara, the Millers mentioned something a development company from back east, buying up land through intermediaries. Railroad. Or mining. Either way, serious money, serious power. He looked at her. Still want to see this through. Clara thought about Alice Washburn's frightened face, about families like hers across the territory living in fear, about her father's dream of a future in the West, a dream being murdered for profit. More than ever, she met his gaze. Whatever it takes. McGraw nodded slowly. Then we need to get smarter. Can't just react anymore, need to get ahead of them. And that means taking risks. What kind of risks? His smile was sharp as a blade. The kind that involve you playing a role you hate and me pretending to be something I'm not. Think you can convince Pritchard you're ready to sell. Understanding dawned. Draw out the buyer. Exactly, but it'll be dangerous. Once they know we're onto them. They'll try to kill us. Clara shrugged. They're trying anyway. Might as well make it interesting. They stood among the dead outlaws, planning their next move while stars wheeled overhead. The fire in the Washburn house had died completely, leaving only darkness and the scent of cooling ashes. But somewhere in that darkness, Clara felt something new kindling, not just vengeance now, but purpose. She'd saved 2 families tonight. With McGraw's help, she'd save more. And eventually, they'd find the puppet master pulling the Black Vulture's strings. The ghost of her family still rode with her, would always ride with her. But tonight, they had company, the living she'd protected, the future she was fighting to preserve. It was a start. The abandoned ranch house stood like a skeleton against the star-filled sky, its empty windows staring blindly at the desert. Clara and McGraw had been riding hard for 2 hours, putting distance between themselves and the Washburn place. When they'd spotted it, a perfect shelter for the night. Used to be the Donovan place, Clara said, recognizing the distinctive stone chimney. They left after the drought of 71. McGraw dismounted, checking the structure with professional caution. Roof's intact. We'll be hidden from the road. He glanced at her. You holding up? I'm fine. But her hands shook slightly as she unsaddled Buttercup. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her aware of every ache, every moment of danger they'd faced. They made a cold camp inside, not risking a fire that might draw attention. McGraw had packed dried beef and biscuits, which they ate in companionable silence. The moonlight streaming through gaps in the walls created a patchwork of silver and shadow. Tell me about the war, Clara said suddenly. Your part in it. McGraw's hand stilled on his gun, which he'd been cleaning by feel. Why? Because we're partners. Because I've put my life in your hands. And I know almost nothing about you. She pulled her blanket tighter. And because the silence is too loud. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I was 17 when I enlisted. Thought it would be an adventure. Glory and honor and all that horseshit boys tell themselves. His voice carried old bitterness. Learned different at Shiloh. You were at Shiloh. First day. Went in a boy, came out. Something else. He resumed cleaning his weapon. The movements, automatic. After that, they found I had a talent. Could move quiet. Shoot straight. Follow orders without questions. Started sending me on special assignments. What kind of assignments? The kind they don't write about in history books. Behind enemy lines. Sabotage. Assassination. He said the last word without emotion. By the end, I'd killed more men in the dark than in battle. Got so good at it they gave me a medal. For excellence in murder. Clara studied his profile in the moonlight. Is that when you became Hunter? That's when James McGraw died. Hunter was what was left. He looked at her directly. Still want me for a partner. You're not that man anymore. Aren't I? I've killed 7 men in the last 2 days. 8, if you count the one trying to reach his horse. His smile held no warmth. Face it, Clara, you've allied yourself with exactly what everyone says I am a killer. A killer who separated from a posse to save innocent lives, who warned the Millers and came to help me. She moved closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. Maybe you're not as lost as you think. And maybe you're not as found as you hope. His voice roughened. This path we're on, it only leads one place. More blood, more death, until either we're dead or we become the monsters we're fighting. Then why help me? He set aside his gun, running a hand through his dark hair. Because I'm selfish. Because for the first time in years, I'm doing something that matters. And because... He stopped abruptly. Because what? Because you look at me and see something besides a weapon. The admission seemed to cost him. Do you know how long it's been since anyone did that? The air between them shifted, charged with something that had nothing to do with danger and everything to do with the awareness that had been building since their first meeting. Clara found herself leaning forward, her heart racing for entirely different reasons than fear. James, she whispered, using his real name for the first time. He caught her shoulders, holding her back even as his eyes burned with the same need she felt. Don't! I'm no good for you. Clara, I'm death walking, and everything I touch. I'm already touched by death. She interrupted. It took my family, my home, my innocence, but I'm still here. Still alive. She brought her hand up to cover his. Don't I get to choose what I do with that life? You're choosing badly. I'm choosing freely. There's a difference. He stared at her for a long moment, and she could see the war in his eyes, desire battling with conscience, need fighting against his determination to protect her from himself. Then, with a sound that might have been defeat or surrender, he pulled her to him. His kiss was nothing like she'd imagined, not gentle or tentative, but desperate, hungry, like a drowning man finding air. Clara responded instinctively, her hands tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. The loneliness and pain of the last 3 years seemed to pour out of her into this moment, this connection. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, McGraw rested his forehead against hers. This is a mistake. Probably, Clara agreed, her voice unsteady. But I'm tired of being careful, tired of being proper, tired of being afraid. You should be afraid, of me most of all. Why? Because you might hurt me, she laughed, but it held no humor. Everything hurts. James, at least this is a pain I'm choosing. He kissed her again, softer this time, but no less intense. His hands framed her face like she was something precious, something that might break. The tenderness undid her more than passion had. Clara, he breathed against her lips. God help me, but I... A sound outside made them both freeze horses approaching, moving slow and careful. McGraw was on his feet instantly, gun in hand, all traces of vulnerability gone. He moved to the window, peering out. 3 riders, coming from the direction of town. He glanced back at her. Friends of yours. Clara joined him, squinting into the darkness. Then she gasped. It's Abigail, and that looks like... Miguel. They emerged cautiously as the riders approached. Abigail Foster, Clara's closest friend in Silver Creek, rode alongside Miguel Santos from the Lazy J, and surprisingly, Sheriff Thomas himself. Clara, Abigail dismounted in a rush, embracing her friend. When the Washburns arrived with your warning, I was so worried. Then these gentlemen said they knew where to find you. How? McGraw's voice was cold, suspicious. Miguel grinned. I track for the Lazy J, senor. Following your trail was not so difficult. The sheriff, he insisted on coming. Sheriff Thomas looked older than his years in the moonlight. Miss Clara, Mr. McGraw, we need to talk. Things have gotten complicated in town. They gathered inside the ranch house, Abigail producing a small lantern that cast flickering light on their faces. The sheriff pulled out a telegram, handing it to McGraw. "Came in an hour ago. From the U.S. Marshal's office." McGraw read it, his expression darkening. "They're sending marshals. 3 days." "What?" Clara snatched the paper. The message was brief but clear federal intervention in the Silver Creek situation. Marshals to arrive within 72 hours to restore order and investigate criminal conspiracy. "Someone's getting nervous," McGraw said. "Calling in federal help to clean up their mess. Or to eliminate loose ends," Sheriff Thomas added grimly, "including anyone who knows too much." "Which is why we came to find you," Abigail said. "Mr. Pritchard left town an hour after the Washburns arrived. Took the evening stage headed east. But before he left," she pulled out a leather journal. "He was drunk, scared, came to the boarding house, gave me this, said if anything happened to him, to make sure it got to someone who could use it." Clara opened the journal, McGraw reading over her shoulder. It was all their names, dates, amounts paid, a complete record of the conspiracy, including the name that made Clara's blood run cold. "Harrison Blackwood," she breathed. "The railroad magnate." "More than that," Sheriff Thomas said. "He owns half the territory through shell companies. Has judges, politicians, even lawmen in his pocket." He looked older, defeated. "If he's behind this, we're not fighting outlaws anymore. We're fighting an empire." "All the more reason to fight," McGraw said quietly. "Empires fall. Men like Blackwood always think they're untouchable. That's their weakness." "You're talking about taking on one of the richest men in America," the sheriff protested. "With what, a handful of people and some stolen documents?" "With the truth," Clara said firmly. "And with courage. The same things that have toppled tyrants throughout history." Miguel spoke up. "The vaqueros at the Lazy J. We have no love for the Black Vultures. They killed our friend Roberto last spring. You need fighters. We will ride with you. And the families they've targeted will help," Abigail added. "The Washburns are already spreading the word. People are angry, scared, but ready to act." McGraw studied the journal intently. "According to this, Blackwood's arriving in Silver Creek himself, day after tomorrow, ostensibly to survey his potential investments." "He wouldn't dare," Sheriff Thomas said. "Not with everything that's happening." "He would if he thought the threat was neutralized. If he believed his money and influence had already won." McGraw's smile was predatory. "He's coming to claim his prize. Instead, he'll find something else entirely." "What are you thinking?" Clara asked, recognizing the look in his eyes. "I'm thinking, mister, Blackwood needs to learn that some things can't be bought, like justice or the people of Silver Creek." He turned to the sheriff. "How many deputies can you really trust?" "Maybe 3, 4 if old Pete stays sober." "That'll have to do, Miguel. How many vaqueros would stand with us?" 10, maybe 12. Good men, good shots. Citizens." McGraw looked at Abigail. "Once they know the truth, once they understand their neighbors died for a rich man's greed." Her usually gentle face hardened. "Every able-bodied person in town will stand with us." Clara felt something swelling in her chest. Hope, perhaps, or the beginning of victory. "So, we make our stand when Blackwood arrives. Arrest him, expose the conspiracy." "It won't be that simple," McGraw warned. "He'll have bodyguards, probably some of the Black Vultures themselves, and those federal marshals, they might be in his pocket too." "Then we'd better be ready," Clara said. She looked around the room at these people friends, allies, warriors in their own right. "We have 2 days to prepare, to turn Silver Creek from a victim into a fortress." Sheriff Thomas stood straighter, years seeming to fall away. "I've been a coward, hiding behind this badge while good people died. No more, win or lose. We make our stand. Together." Abigail added, taking Clara's hand. Together, Miguel echoed, hand on his pistol. McGraw looked at each of them, then at Clara. Something passed between them, a promise unspoken but understood. Whatever happened in the next 2 days, they would face it side by side. Then we'd better get started, he said. We have a town to save and a would-be emperor to dethrone. As the group prepared to ride back to Silver Creek, Clara caught McGraw's arm. What we started earlier. We'll have to wait, he said softly. I won't risk being distracted when your life's at stake. And when this is over, he cupped her face gently, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. Ask me again when we're both still breathing. It wasn't a declaration of love, but it was a promise of possibility. For now, with danger closing in and justice within reach, it was enough. They rode back to Silver Creek as dawn broke over the desert, painting the world in shades of gold and red. The abandoned ranch fell behind them, keeping its secrets a first kiss, a conspiracy revealed, and the birth of something that might, against all odds, be called hope. The next 2 days would determine everything, but for the first time since her family's murder, Clara Bell felt like she was riding towards something instead of away from it. Justice, love, redemption all hanging in the balance, waiting to see who would prove stronger, a rich man's greed or a small town's courage. The ghost of Samuel Bell seemed to ride with them, and Clara could almost hear her brother's voice on the wind, "Be brave, sister, be brave." She would be, for him, for her parents, for the future she and James might yet claim. The war for Silver Creek was about to begin. Silver Creek transformed in 2 days. What had been a town of fear and resignation became something else entirely, a community preparing for war. Clara stood on the boarding house balcony, watching as men and women who'd avoided each other's eyes for months now worked side by side, building barricades and checking weapons. Never thought I'd see it, Abigail said, joining her. The whole town, united like this. Fear's a powerful motivator. Clara replied, but it's more than that. They're tired of being victims. Below, McGraw directed the placement of sharpshooters, his military experience evident in every decision. Sheriff Thomas worked alongside him, the 2 men having found an unexpected partnership. Miguel and his vaqueros patrolled the perimeter, their knowledge of the land invaluable. He's quite something. You're Mr. McGraw, Abigail observed, noting where Clara's attention had focused. He's not my anything, Clara said quickly, though heat rose in her cheeks, remembering their interrupted moment at the abandoned ranch. No, the way he looks at you says different. Abigail's voice gentled. Clara, no one would blame you for finding happiness, even now, especially now. There's no time for that, not with Blackwood coming. There's always time for love. Sometimes it's all we have against the darkness. Before Clara could respond, a commotion arose from the street. Riders approaching not the enemy, but the Washburns returning with others. Clara's heart lifted as she recognized the Millers among them, along with several other families who'd fled the threat of the Black Vultures. We couldn't stay away. Alice Washburn called up. This is our home. We'll defend it. More arrived throughout the morning. Word had spread across the territory. Ranchers, farmers, even some Apache scouts who'd lost friends to the gang's predations. By noon, Silver Creek's population had swelled with fighters. McGraw found Clara in the makeshift command center they'd established in the sheriff's office. We might actually have a chance, he said, but his expression remained grim. Though Blackwood won't come alone, my guess is at least 20 men. Maybe more. The whole town's armed now. We have numbers. Numbers don't mean much against experienced killers. He spread out a map of the town. But we have advantages. We know the ground. We have the element of surprise. And most importantly, we have rage. Rage. Controlled rage, the kind that makes a shopkeeper into a warrior when his family's threatened. He marked positions on the map. "I've seen it in war. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things because they have no choice." Clara studied the tactical marks. "You're planning an ambush. Multiple ambushes. Let them enter town thinking they own it. Then close the trap." His finger traced the main street. "Here, here, and here. Crossfire positions that'll turn Main Street into a killing ground. Women and children already moving to the church, fortified, supplied with armed guards." He glanced at her. "You should be with them." "We've had this discussion." "We have doesn't mean I have to like the answer." He rolled up the map. "Blackwood's train arrives at 4. He'll want to make an entrance, probably come down Main Street like a conquering hero, while his men scout ahead." "Exactly. Which is why Miguel's riders are so important. They'll give us warning, maybe thin the numbers before they reach town." A knock interrupted them. Sheriff Thomas entered with a thin, nervous man Clara didn't recognize. "This is Edwin Marsh," the sheriff said. "He worked for Blackwood. Has information." Marsh fidgeted with his hat. I kept the books. Didn't know what it was for at first, just numbers and payments. But then I heard about the families, the murders." He swallowed hard. "I have a daughter. Couldn't stomach it anymore." McGraw leaned forward. "What can you tell us?" "Blackwood's bringing 30 men. Half are Black Vultures. The rest hired guns from Kansas City. They're planning to..." He paused, looking sick. "They're planning to clean out the town, make it look like an Indian raid, blame it on renegades. Blackwood gets the land, and no one asks questions." Clara's blood ran cold. Everyone who might talk, they have a list." Marsh pulled out a paper with shaking hands. 43 names. Anyone who's shown resistance or might testify." The room fell silent as they absorbed this. Not just a land grab anymore, but planned mass murder. "Does Blackwood know you've left?" McGraw asked quietly. "I don't think so. Told them I was sick, needed to see the doctor." "Then you're our ace in the hole." McGraw smiled coldly. "How would you like to send your former employer a message?" An hour later, Marsh's telegram went out. Using Blackwood's own codes, Silver Creek pacified, minimal resistance expected, safe to proceed as planned. "He'll be overconfident," McGraw said. "Expecting sheep, not wolves." The afternoon wore on with tense preparation. Clara checked and rechecked her weapons, helped distribute ammunition, tried not to think about how many of these brave people might die before sunset. McGraw stayed busy with tactical planning, but she caught him watching her, his expression unreadable. At 3:30, Miguel galloped in with news. "They come, the train has arrived. Blackwood travels in a fine carriage, very proud. His men spread out, but casual. They suspect nothing." "Positions," Sheriff Thomas bellowed. The town emptied like magic, fighters melting into buildings, onto roofs, behind barricades. Clara took her assigned spot in the hotel, 2nd floor, with clear sight lines down Main Street. Her father's rifle felt heavy in her hands. The waiting was agony. Each minute stretched like an hour, the silence broken only by distant hoofbeats growing closer. Then, finally, they appeared. Blackwood's carriage was indeed fine black lacquer with gold trim, pulled by matched grays. The man himself was visible through the window, portly and well-dressed, reading papers as if this was merely another business trip. His men rode alongside, relaxed, joking among themselves. Clara recognized some from that night 3 years ago. Her finger found the trigger, but she held, waiting for McGraw's signal. The carriage reached the center of town. Blackwood emerged, stretching like he owned the place. He was older than Clara expected, with silver hair and the soft look of a man who hired others to do his violence. "Sheriff Thomas," he called out pompously. "I trust you received word of my arrival. I'll need to inspect the land offices immediately." Thomas stepped out of his office, badge gleaming. "Harrison Blackwood, you're under arrest for conspiracy, murder, and attempted murder. Throw down your weapons." For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Blackwood actually laughed. "Have you lost your mind? Sheriff, do you know who I am? I own judges who could hang you for this impertinence." "Maybe so," Thomas replied steadily. "But you don't own Silver Creek." That's when McGraw's shot rang out. The lead gunman toppled from his horse, and suddenly the air filled with gunfire. Clara sighted on a man raising his rifle toward the sheriff. Squeezed the trigger, watched him fall. No time for guilt or second thoughts. This was survival. The black vultures, caught in the open, tried to rally. Some dove for cover, others charged the buildings, but they met withering fire from every window, every rooftop. The vaqueros swept in from the side streets, cutting off retreat. Clara loaded and fired, her world narrowing to targets and triggers. Below, she saw McGraw moving through the chaos like death itself, his twin colts speaking with deadly precision. Blackwood cowered behind his carriage, screaming orders no one followed. His beautiful coach sprouted bullet holes like pox marks. The matched grays, terrified, broke free and bolted. "The church," someone yelled. "They're going for the church." Clara's heart stopped. A group of vultures had broken away, riding hard toward where the women and children sheltered. Without thinking, she abandoned her position, racing down the stairs and into the street. The fighting was fierce and close now. She dodged between combatants, once having to club a man with her rifle butt when he lunged at her. The church seemed impossibly far away. Then McGraw was beside her, matching her pace. "Go, I'll clear the way." He did, his guns cutting a path through the chaos. They reached the church steps just as the vultures arrived. Clara spun, firing from the hip, surprising herself when a rider tumbled from his saddle. The church doors burst open and more guns spoke. The women inside hadn't waited passively. Abigail stood in the doorway with a shotgun, looking fierce as any warrior. Caught between two forces, the attackers fell quickly. The last one, wounded and horseless, tried to crawl away. Clara recognized him, one of the men who'd held her mother. "Wait," she said as McGraw moved to finish him. She knelt beside the wounded outlaw. "Do you remember the Bell family 3 years ago?" The man's eyes widened with recognition and fear. You're the girl, the one who hid." "Yes. Do you remember what you did to them?" "Please." "Do you remember?" Her voice was ice. "Yes," he whispered. "God help me. Yes." Clara studied him broken, bleeding, pathetic. This thing that had haunted her nightmares for 3 years. "Then live with it," she said finally. "Live with it like I have." She stood, turning away as McGraw efficiently bound the man's wounds. "He'll hang?" McGraw said quietly. "Legal and proper." "Good. Let him wait for it like my family waited for justice." They returned to Main Street to find the battle ending. Bodies littered the ground. Mostly Blackwood's men, but some townspeople too. The price of freedom, paid in blood. Blackwood himself sat in the dust, hands raised, his fine clothes ruined. Sheriff Thomas stood over him, gun drawn, while Miguel and the vaqueros rounded up survivors. "It's over," Thomas called out. "We've won." A ragged cheer went up, but it was muted. Victory had come at cost. Clara saw Mrs. Patterson weeping over her husband's body, young Tommy Chen bleeding from a shoulder wound. Too many familiar faces among the fallen. "The federal marshals will be here tomorrow," Blackwood snarled, some courage returning now that the shooting had stopped. "You think this changes anything? I have lawyers. Influence." "You have nothing," McGraw interrupted, producing Pritchard's journal. "Names, dates, payments to hired killers. Enough to hang you twice over." "You can't prove—" "Edwin Marsh can," Clara added, satisfaction in her voice as Blackwood's face went white. "Your bookkeeper—" He's been very helpful. The fight went out of Blackwood then. He sagged, looking suddenly old and pathetic. This man who'd caused so much death and misery, reduced to nothing by the courage of people he dismissed as insignificant. As the sun set, turning the sky blood red, Silver Creek began the grim work of tending wounded and counting dead. 7 townspeople had fallen, including Sheriff Thomas's young deputy and one of Miguel's friends. But Blackwood's force was destroyed, 18 dead, 9 captured. 3 fled into the desert. Clara found herself in the church, helping tend wounded. Her hands were steady now. The shaking that had plagued her for 3 years finally stilled. She'd faced her demons and won. "Clara." McGraw appeared at her elbow. "You're hurt." She looked down, surprised to find blood on her sleeve. "Just a graze. I didn't even feel it." "Adrenaline? Come on, let me look." He led her outside, away from the crowds. His hands were gentle as he cleaned and bandaged the wound, but his face was troubled. What's wrong? We won." "Did we?" He secured the bandage. "How many of those men had families? How many were just hired guns trying to make a living? Where does justice end and vengeance begin?" "They made their choice when they rode with killers." "Like I did, like you did." He met her eyes. "I told you this path changes you. Look at your hands. Clara, they're steady now because they're stained with blood. Is that what your father would have wanted?" Clara pulled away, anger flaring. "Don't you dare! Not now! Not after everything!" "I'm not judging. God knows I have no right." He caught her hands, holding them gently. "I'm asking you to see clearly. You got your justice today. Morrison's dead. Blackwood will hang. The Black Vultures are finished. What comes next?" The question hung between them, around them. Silver Creek was celebrating, but Clara felt the weight of McGraw's words. What did come next? She'd lived for vengeance for 3 years. Now that she had it, who was she? "I don't know," she admitted. "I've been running on hate for so long. I'm not sure what's left underneath." "Then maybe it's time to find out." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "You're free now. Clara, free to choose who you want to be. What about you? What will you choose?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I've been a weapon for so long. I'm not sure I remember how to be anything else. But maybe—" He looked at her with those storm cloud eyes. "Maybe it's time to try." "Stay," she said impulsively. "Silver Creek needs rebuilding. Good men to replace the bad. You could be Sheriff Thomas is talking about retiring." "A gunfighter wearing a badge that's asking for trouble." "A man who knows the darkness wearing a badge. That's asking for justice." She stepped closer. "Stay, James. Help me figure out what comes next." He pulled her to him then, holding her as the sun died completely. Around them, Silver Creek began the long work of healing. Tomorrow, federal marshals would arrive to find a town that had saved itself. Blackwood would face trial. The dead would be buried. But tonight, Clara Bell stood in the arms of a man who understood her darkness and her light. And for the first time in 3 years, she felt something other than rage or pain. She felt hope. "Ask me again in the morning," McGraw murmured against her hair. "When the adrenaline's gone and reality sets in, ask me then." "I will," she promised. And she would, because justice had been served. But life, real life. Not just survival that was just beginning. The stars emerged overhead, clean and bright above the gun smoke. Somewhere among them, Clara imagined her family watching, finally at peace. She'd kept her promise. Now it was time to make new ones. Dawn broke gray and subdued over Silver Creek, matching the town's mood. The celebration of victory had given way to the grim reality of loss. Clara stood at the cemetery, watching as 7 new graves were dug alongside her family's plots. The sound of shovels biting earth felt like a countdown to something final. McGraw found her there, looking haggard after a sleepless night helping tend the wounded. "The federal marshals just arrived," he said quietly. "They want to talk to you." "About what?" "Everything. Morrison, Blackwood, the fights. They're taking statements from everyone involved." He paused. "They're also asking about me, my past." Clara turned to face him fully. He'd cleaned up, shaved, but exhaustion lined his face. "What will you tell them?" "The truth, or enough of it." He gestured toward town. "Come on, best not to keep them waiting." The marshals had set up in the hotel. 3 stern men who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Marshal Davidson, the senior officer, was a thin man with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Miss Bell." He greeted her formally. "Please, sit. We have questions about your involvement in recent events." For 2 hours, Clara recounted everything: her family's murder, the conspiracy, the battles. The marshals took notes, occasionally exchanging glances. When she finished, Davidson leaned back. "You took the law into your own hands." "The law had 3 years to act," Clara replied steadily. "It failed." "That's not how justice works, Miss Bell." "Then, how does it work? Marshal, when rich men buy killers and the law looks away, when families are slaughtered for profit." Her voice hardened. "We defended ourselves, that's all." Davidson studied her for a long moment. "The evidence against Blackwood is overwhelming. He'll hang, along with the captured gang members. But vigilante justice, that's a dangerous precedent. So is allowing citizens to be murdered while waiting for help that never comes." The marshal had no answer to that. He dismissed her with a warning about taking the law into her own hands again. But Clara could see in his eyes a grudging respect. Outside, she found McGraw deep in conversation with Sheriff Thomas and Judge Garrett, who'd arrived from the county seat. As she approached, the judge was speaking. "And need someone with experience, someone who understands both sides of the law." He looked at McGraw meaningfully. "The position is yours if you want it." "What position?" Clara asked. Thomas turned to her. "I'm retiring, effective immediately. This town needs younger blood, someone who can handle what's coming." He nodded at McGraw. "I've recommended James here as my replacement." Clara's heart skipped. "And—" McGraw met her eyes. "I haven't decided." "The pay's not much," Judge Garrett admitted. "But the town owns a small house on Elm Street. Comes with the job. And after what you've done here, you'd have the full support of the community." "I need time to think," McGraw said finally. After the officials left, Clara and McGraw walked slowly through town. Evidence of the battle remained: bullet holes in buildings, bloodstains on dusty streets, but life was returning. Shopkeepers swept their storefronts. Children peered out windows, and the sound of hammering indicated repairs already beginning. "You should take it," Clara said. "The sheriff position." A killer wearing a badge. A protector wearing a badge. There's a difference. She stopped walking, facing him. This town needs someone who understands that sometimes violence is necessary to prevent greater violence. Someone who's seen the worst and chooses to stand against it. "And what about you? What do you choose?" The question she'd been avoiding. "I don't know. For 3 years, revenge was my only purpose. Now—" She gestured helplessly. "Abigail wants me to help run the boarding house. The Washburns offered to fund me if I want to open my own business. But none of it feels right. Because you're still running on yesterday's anger. Give it time." He touched her arm gently. "What would make you happy?" "Clara, not what others expect. Not what's proper. What do you want?" The answer came without thought. "You." The word hung between them, stark and honest. McGraw's eyes darkened, but before he could respond, commotion erupted near the jail. They rushed over to find a crowd gathered. One of the captured outlaws had tried to escape, resulting in a scuffle that left a deputy injured. The would-be escapee lay in the dust, thoroughly subdued by Miguel and his vaqueros.
This is why we need you.
Thomas told McGraw urgently.
I'm too old for this, too tired. These men respect you, fear you. That's what's needed now.
McGraw looked at the scene, the injured deputy, the snarling outlaw, the townspeople watching with a mixture of fear and hope. Then he looked at Clara. All right, he said quietly. I'll take the position, temporarily. Thomas's face flooded with relief. You won't regret it. I already do, McGraw muttered, but there was something lighter in his expression. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. McGraw was sworn in. The captured outlaws secured for transport to federal prison, and the wounded tended. As evening approached, Clara found herself back at the Broken Spur, helping Big Tom serve drinks to travelers eager for stories of the battle. You're different, Tom observed during a quiet moment. Harder, but also, I don't know, settled.
I got what I wanted,
Clara replied, though the words felt incomplete. Justice for my family. And now? Before she could answer, the doors swung open. McGraw entered, wearing the sheriff's badge like it was made of lead. The bar quieted momentarily, then erupted in cheers. Men slapped his back, bought him drinks, treated him like the hero they needed him to be. But his eyes found Clara across the room, and in them she saw the same uncertainty she felt. They'd won their war. But what came next? As the evening wore on, Clara slipped out the back, needing air. She walked to her family's graves, a ritual that had sustained her through grief and rage, but tonight felt different.
I did it, Pa,
she whispered to the wooden crosses. They're dead or caught. The man who ordered it will hang. You're avenged. The wind rustled through the cemetery grass, and for a moment, Clara could almost hear her father's voice. Is that all you are, sweet girl, an instrument of vengeance? I don't know what else to be, she admitted to the darkness. You could try being happy. She spun to find McGraw behind her, his approach silent as always. Following me. Sheriff.
Part of the job, keeping citizens safe.
He moved to stand beside her.
Even from themselves.
I'm not in danger. Aren't you? You've been living for death so long, I think you've forgotten how to live. He turned to face her fully. Earlier, you said you wanted me. Did you mean it? Clara's breath caught. Yes, even knowing what I am, what I've done. Because I know what you are, what we both are now. She stepped closer. We've walked through darkness. James, maybe that means we can find light together. He caught her face in his hands, thumbs tracing her cheekbones with impossible gentleness.
I'm no good at this, at normalcy, happiness. I'll probably fail.
Then we'll fail together. She covered his hands with hers. Stay with me, not just in Silver Creek, but with me. Let's see what we can build from the ashes. His kiss was answer enough, deep and desperate and full of promise. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, McGraw rested his forehead against hers. The house that comes with the sheriff job, it's too big for one person. Clara's heart raced.
Is that a proposal?
It's a suggestion, a possibility. He pulled back to look at her. I know it's fast, but we've already faced death together. Maybe it's time to try life. My reputation will survive. You're the woman who helped save Silver Creek. That buys a lot of forgiveness for impropriety. His smile turned wry. Besides, what's more proper than the sheriff courting the town heroine? Clara laughed, surprising herself with how easy it came. When you put it that way. They walked back through town together, not touching but aware of each other with every step. The future stretched before them, uncertain but no longer empty. There would be challenges, McGraw learning to be a lawman instead of just a killer. Clara finding purpose beyond revenge. Both of them learning to trust in happiness. But tonight, with stars emerging overhead and Silver Creek settling into peaceful sleep. Anything seemed possible. At the boarding house, Abigail waited on the porch. "About time," she said, looking between them with satisfaction. "I've already picked out fabric for your wedding dress." "Abigail," Clara protested, blushing. "What the whole town's been waiting for you two to figure it out." She hugged Clara, then surprised McGraw by hugging him too. "You saved us, both of you. Now save each other." As Abigail went inside, McGraw caught Clara's hand. "Is that what we're doing, saving each other?" "Maybe. Or maybe we're just choosing to stop surviving and start living." She squeezed his fingers. "Either way, I'm glad you're staying." "So am I," he admitted. And Clara could see he meant it. "So am I." They stood there in the darkness. Two damaged souls who'd found each other through violence and loss. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The families of the dead outlaws might seek revenge. Other gangs might test the new sheriff. Life would continue with all its complications. But tonight, Clara Bell and James McGraw had each other and the possibility of peace. It wasn't the ending she'd imagined during those long years of grief and rage. It was better, messier, more uncertain, but real. "Good night, Sheriff," she said softly. "Good night, Miss Bell." He touched his hat brim, a gesture both formal and intimate. "Sweet dreams." As Clara climbed the stairs to her room, she realized her dreams would be different now. Not nightmares of fire and death, but possibilities of life and love. The ghosts of her family would always ride with her. But perhaps they could rest easier knowing she'd found not just justice, but hope. Through her window, she could see McGraw walking his first patrol as sheriff, his tall figure a guardian shadow in the night. Silver Creek slept peacefully, protected now by a man who understood both darkness and light. Clara touched the window glass, making a silent promise to her parents, to Samuel, to herself. She would truly live not just for them, but for herself. And maybe, just maybe, she'd find that happiness her father had always wanted for her. The sound of McGraw's footsteps faded into the distance, but Clara knew he'd return. They'd both return to each other, again and again, building something new from the ashes of their pain. Justice had been served. Now it was time for everything that came after. 3 weeks had passed since the battle for Silver Creek. The town bore scars, patched bullet holes in buildings, fresh paint covering blood stains, new names on wooden crosses in the cemetery. But life had found its rhythm again, and at the center of that rhythm was Sheriff James McGraw. Clara watched from the general store as he mediated a dispute between two ranchers over water rights. His approach was different from Sheriff Thomas's quieter, more direct, with an underlying steel that made men think twice before escalating their grievances. "He's good at it." "Mrs." Patterson observed, joining Clara at the window. The widow had reopened her husband's store, determined to carry on. "Never thought I'd see a gunfighter turned peacekeeper." "He's more than just a gunfighter," Clara said softly. "Oh, I know that look." "Mrs." Patterson smiled, despite her recent grief. "When's he going to make an honest woman of you?" Clara blushed. "We're taking things slowly." "Slowly, child. You helped kill half an outlaw gang together. I'd say you're past the courtship phase." Before the Clara could respond, raised voices drew their attention back outside. A group of riders had arrived, hard-looking men who wore their guns like old friends. Clara's hand instinctively moved to the derringer in her pocket. McGraw faced them calmly, badge glinting in the afternoon sun. "Gentlemen, something I can help you with." The leader, a scarred man with cold eyes, leaned forward in his saddle. "We're looking for Jake Morrison. Heard he might have passed through here." "Morrison's dead," McGraw replied evenly. "Killed 3 weeks ago along with several other members of the Black Vulture gang." "That's so." The scarred man's eyes narrowed. "And who might have done that?" "I did, among others." McGraw's hand rested casually near his gun. Morrison was wanted for murder. Justice caught up with him.
Justice?
The man spat tobacco juice. That what you call it when you gun down a man's brother? Clara's blood chilled.
Morrison's brother.
They'd known this might happen, revenge seeking revenge in an endless cycle. I call it what it was. McGraw said, your brother chose his path. It led him here.
Maybe my path leads here too,
the scarred man said. Maybe I've got business with whoever killed Jake. The street had emptied, townspeople sensing trouble, but Clara noticed the movement Miguel on a rooftop, rifle ready. Deputy Carson in the sheriff's office doorway. The town had learned to protect its own. Then your business is with me, McGraw said. No one else, just me. You, Morrison's brother laughed harshly. The great Hunter McGraw, hiding behind a badge Jake told me about you. Said you'd gone soft. Your brother died with a gun in his hand, trying to murder innocent people. Nothing soft about stopping that. McGraw stepped into the street. You want satisfaction, get down off that horse and face me. But know this, you draw on me. You die, just like Jake. The tension stretched taut. Clara found herself holding her breath, her hand tight on her gun. She'd come too far, found too much, to lose it now to another man's vendetta. Morrison's brother studied McGraw for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he laughed. You know what, Jake always was a fool. Thought he was untouchable. Thought fear made him strong. He gathered his reins. Maybe he got what he deserved. Maybe he did, McGraw agreed. Question is, are you smarter than he was? Guess we'll see. The scarred man tipped his hat mockingly. Be seeing you, Sheriff, when you don't have the whole town backing your play. They rode out, leaving dust and unfinished threats behind. McGraw stood in the street until they disappeared. Then his shoulders sagged slightly. Clara rushed to him. You all right? Fine. Just tired of it. He looked at her with those storm cloud eyes. This is what I meant. Clara, the killing doesn't stop just because we want it to. There's always another brother, another friend, another score to settle. You did the right thing. You didn't escalate it. This time? What about next time, or the time after that? He removed his hat, running fingers through his hair. Maybe I'm fooling myself, thinking I can be anything but what I've always been. Don't, Clara said firmly. Don't you dare give up now. This town needs you. I need you. He caught her hand, holding it gently. I know. That's what scares me most. Letting you down. Letting them down. He nodded toward the emerging townspeople. They look at me like I'm some kind of savior. They don't see the blood on my hands. They see a man who'll stand between them and danger. That's what matters. She squeezed his fingers. Come on, let me buy the sheriff a drink. They walked to the Broken Spur, where Big Tom already had a bottle waiting. The saloon was quiet in the afternoon. Just a few regulars nursing beers and discussing the confrontation. Handled that well, Tom said, pouring whiskey. Old Sheriff Thomas would have arrested them or shot them. You found a third way. For now, McGraw said darkly. Men like that don't forget. Neither do we, Clara reminded him. This town's not the same scared place it was a month ago. We've learned to fight back. That's what worries me. Fighting's easy. It's the not fighting that takes work. Before Clara could respond, Abigail burst through the doors. Clara, Sheriff, come quickly, it's the Hendricks farm. They ran, following Abigail to the edge of town where a wagon had just arrived. In the back lay Paul Hendricks, a farmer from Up Valley, bloodied and barely conscious. His young son sat beside him, tears streaming down dirt-stained cheeks. Bandits, the boy gasped out. They came at dawn. Pa tried to fight. McGraw was already examining the wounds, his battlefield experience evident. He'll live, but he needs the doc now. He looked at the boy. How many men? 4, maybe 5.
They took Ma and my sisters, said they'd sell them in Mexico if we didn't pay. Clara's heart clenched. The Hendricks girls were 12 and 14. Their mother, a gentle woman who'd never hurt anyone. Did you recognize any of them? The boy shook his head. They had their faces covered, but one of them, he had a scar. Right here. He drew a line down his cheek. McGraw and Clara exchanged looks. Morrison's brother hadn't left after all. Get Paul to the doctor. McGraw ordered, Boy, you stay with him. We'll get your family back. As they prepared to ride out, Clara was surprised to find herself surrounded by volunteers, Miguel and his vaqueros, of course, but also shopkeepers, farmers, even old Pete from the saloon. This is our fight too, Mrs., Patterson said, checking a rifle with surprising competence. They think we're weak without Blackwood's protection. Time to prove them wrong. McGraw looked uncomfortable with the size of the group. This isn't a town social. These men are killers. So were the Black Vultures, Alice Washburn pointed out. She and her husband among the volunteers. We faced them down. We can do it again. A posse's one thing. This feels like a mob. Then lead us, Clara said quietly. Show them the difference between justice and vengeance. He studied the determined faces around him, then nodded slowly. All right, but we do this my way. Disciplined, controlled. The goal is to save the Hendricks family, not rack up a body count. They rode out 30 strong. A mixture of professional fighters and ordinary citizens united in purpose. McGraw organized them efficiently, scouts ahead, main body together, reserves behind. Clara rode beside him, noting how naturally command came to him. Military habits die hard, he said, catching her observation. Good thing. We need those habits now. They found the trail easily enough Morrison's brother hadn't bothered to hide it, probably counting on fear to keep pursuit at bay. The tracks led north into Badlands, toward a cluster of abandoned mines. Perfect spot for an ambush. McGraw muttered. They're counting on us charging in. So what do we do? What they don't expect. He turned to address the group. They want us emotional, reckless. Instead, we'll be smart. Miguel, take your men around the eastern approach. Mrs. Patterson, you and the shopkeepers set up a perimeter here. Nobody gets past you. What about you? Clara asked. I'm going to negotiate. That's suicide. That's tactics. He smiled grimly. They want me specifically. Morrison's brother made that clear. So I give them what they want a target to focus on while the real rescue happens. Clara grabbed his arm. I'm going with you. Clara, we're partners. In everything. Her tone brooked no argument. Besides, they might be more willing to deal if there's a woman present. Makes you seem less threatening. He clearly wanted to argue, but recognized the steel in her eyes. Fine, but you follow my lead. They approached the mine entrance openly, hands visible but near their weapons. McGraw called out, Morrison, I know you're in there. Let's talk. Silence stretched. Then the scarred man emerged from the shadows, flanked by 4 others. Behind them, Clara glimpsed the Hendricks women, bound but apparently unharmed. Sheriff, Morrison drawled. Thought that might bring you running, though I expected you alone. Miss Bell has a stake in this. Her family was murdered by your brother's gang. Morrison's eyes flicked to Clara. The Bell girl, Jake mentioned you, said you hid while your family died. Clara felt the old rage flare but controlled it. I survived. That's what matters. Survival, Morrison laughed. That all you got from it, see, when someone kills my kin. I don't just survive, I take payment in blood. Then take it from me, McGraw said calmly. Let the women go. You and me, right now. Winner walks away. You die for strangers. I'd die doing my job, but I don't plan on dying today. McGraw unbuckled his gun belt, letting it fall. "What do you say? Morrison, your brother died with a gun in his hand. At least this way, you'd have a fair chance." Morrison considered, and Clara saw the moment he took the bait. Pride, the outlaw's weakness. "All right, Sheriff, you and me. Knives, not guns. I want this personal." As the two men circled each other, Clara caught movement from the corner of her eye. Miguel's men slipping into position. The Hendricks women noticed too, hope flickering in their eyes. The knife fight was brutal and quick. Morrison was skilled, but McGraw had learned his blade work in darker places against deadlier men. When Morrison lunged, McGraw sidestepped, driving his knee into the man's ribs and following with a precise thrust. Morrison fell, gasping, blood spreading across his shirt. His men started forward, but found themselves staring down multiple rifle barrels as the vaqueros revealed themselves. "Nobody else has to die," McGraw announced, standing over Morrison. "Drop your weapons, release the women, and ride out, or stay and join him. Choose." Faced with overwhelming odds, the outlaws chose wisdom. They released the Hendricks women and fled, leaving their leader to his fate. Morrison looked up at McGraw, life fading from his eyes. "Jake always said you were different." "I am," McGraw replied quietly. "I give men choices. Jake chose wrong. So did you." As Morrison breathed his last, Clara helped untie the Hendricks women. The mother wept with relief, the girls clinging to her. It was a good moment, a clean victory with minimal bloodshed. But Clara saw the cost in McGraw's eyes, another death on his conscience, another ghost to carry. She took his hand as they walked back to the horses. "You did what you had to do." "I know, doesn't make it easier." He looked at the celebrating posse members. "They think it's over, but there'll be more Morrisons, more grievances, more blood. It never really ends." "Maybe not," Clara agreed. "But today, a family goes home safe. Today, justice meant something more than revenge. That's enough." He squeezed her hand. "When did you get so wise?" "When I stopped living for death and started living for life," she smiled at him. "Come on, Sheriff. Let's go home." They rode back to Silver Creek as the sun set, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson. The Hendricks family reunited with tears and laughter. The townspeople dispersed to their homes, satisfied with a job well done. But Clara and McGraw lingered in the street, watching the stars emerge. "I've been thinking," he said quietly, "about what you said, taking things slow. Oh, maybe slow's not what either of us needs. We've both been running from life for so long. Maybe it's time to stop running." Clara's heart raced. "What are you saying?" He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands. "I'm saying that tomorrow's not guaranteed. Morrison proved that. I'm saying that I love you, Clara Bell, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise." "James." Her voice broke on his name. "Marry me," he said simply. "Not someday. Not when things are perfect. Now, while we're both here and breathing and brave enough to try." Clara thought of all the reasons to say no too fast, too dangerous, too uncertain. Then she thought of her parents, cut down in their prime, and Samuel, who'd never get to grow up and make these choices. "Yes," she said, laughing through tears. "Yes, you impossible man. Of course, yes." He kissed her there in the street, under stars and witnesses, and Clara felt something settle in her chest, not an ending but a beginning, not a cure for all wounds but a promise to heal together. Silver Creek had been saved from outside threats. Now, perhaps, two of its defenders could save each other from the threats within the ghosts, the guilt, the fear of hoping for happiness. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing in the West ever was. But as Clara Bell stood in the arms of the man she loved, she thought her father would be proud. She'd found justice. Yes, but more than that, she'd found a reason to keep living.
and in a land of dust and blood and broken dreams. That was its own kind of miracle. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, a rarity for Silver Creek in late summer. Clara stood before the mirror in Abigail's room at the boarding house, hardly recognizing the woman staring back at her. The simple white dress made by the town's women working together transformed her from saloon girl to bride. "You're beautiful," Abigail said softly, adjusting the wildflowers in Clara's hair. "Your mother would be so proud." "I wish she could be here," Clara whispered. "All of them. They are honey in every smile, every blessing, every moment of joy you fought so hard to find." Abigail squeezed her shoulders gently. "Now come on. You've got a sheriff to marry." The whole town had turned out for the wedding. The church, scarred from the battle weeks ago, had been decorated with desert sage and late-blooming roses. As Clara walked down the aisle on Big Tom's arm, the closest thing to a father she had left, she saw faces that had become Family Miguel and his vaqueros, the Washburns, Mrs. Patterson, even crusty old Pete cleaned up and sober for the occasion. And at the altar stood James McGraw, looking uncomfortable in his new suit but steadier than she'd ever seen him. His storm cloud eyes found hers and held, and in them she saw their future uncertain, perhaps dangerous, but theirs to face together. Reverend Mills performed the ceremony with genuine warmth, having seen both bride and groom at their worst and now at their best. When he asked if anyone objected, the church fell silent except for the whisper of wind through broken windows, as if the ghosts of the past were giving their blessing. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the Reverend declared. "Sheriff, you may kiss your bride." James cupped her face with those hands that had dealt so much death but now promised life. "Hello, Mrs. McGraw," he murmured before kissing her. The church erupted in cheers, and for a moment Silver Creek forgot its scars and celebrated pure joy. The reception filled the street outside the broken spur. Tables groaned under food contributed by every household, and Tom had opened his best whiskey for the occasion. Clara found herself passed from one well-wisher to another, accepting congratulations and advice with growing warmth. "Never thought I'd see the day," Sheriff Thomas, former sheriff, now said, pumping James's hand, the most feared gunman in 3 territories, domesticated at last. "Not domesticated," James corrected with a slight smile. "Just redirected," as the sun began to set, painting the desert in familiar shades of red and gold. Clara and James slipped away from the celebration. They walked hand in hand to the small house on Elm Street that came with the sheriff's position, their home now. The place was modest but sturdy, with a porch that faced west toward the mountains. Someone, probably Abigail, had prepared it with fresh linens, flowers, and a cold supper waiting. "It's perfect," Clara said, taking in the simple rooms that held such promise. "It's a start," James agreed, pulling her close. "Clara, I need to say something. On our wedding night, this sounds serious." "It is." He led her to the porch, where they could see the last light fading over the desert. "I've been a weapon for so long. I'm not sure I know how to be a husband. I'll make mistakes. I'll have dark days when the ghosts get too loud. Clara silenced him with a kiss. "I'm not marrying you for perfection. James McGraw, I'm marrying you for partnership. We'll face the ghosts together. Remember?" He held her close as darkness settled over Silver Creek. "How did I get so lucky?" "Luck had nothing to do with it," Clara said firmly. "We earned this with blood and tears and choices that led us here. Now we get to earn whatever comes next." They stood together on their porch, watching stars emerge in the vast western sky. Behind them, the sounds of celebration continued their community, their family of choice, marking this moment of hope after so much despair. "No regrets?" James asked softly. Clara thought of the journey that had brought them here, the violence, the loss, the darkness they'd both walked through. Then she thought of Morrison dying in the dust, of Blackwood in chains, of justice served and peace defended. No regrets, she confirmed. Only possibilities. Later, as they lay entwined in their marriage bed, moonlight streaming through the window, Clara traced the scars on James's chest, each one a story of survival, of battles fought before they found each other. "Tell me about this one," she said, touching a puckered mark near his heart. "Shiloh," he said quietly. "Rebel cavalry saber. Thought I was done for, but the field surgeon was too stubborn to let me die." "I'm glad," Clara whispered, kissing the old wound. "Every scar, every close call, they all led you here." "To you." He caught her hand, holding it over his heart. "Clara, A sound outside made them both freeze horses, moving fast toward town. James was out of bed and reaching for his gun before Clara could blink, the lawman instinct already strong. "Stay here," he ordered, pulling on trousers. "Like hell," Clara replied, grabbing her wrapper and the pistol from her nightstand. They crept to the window, peering out at the street. 3 riders had stopped at the sheriff's office, one holding a torch that cast wild shadows. "Sheriff McGraw," one called out. "Got a message for you." James stepped onto the porch, gun ready but not aimed. "Kinda late for social calls, boys." The lead rider laughed harshly. "Just wanted to congratulate you on your wedding, Sheriff, and to let you know the Colton gang sends their regards. We'll be seeing you real soon." They wheeled their horses and galloped off, but not before one tossed something at the house. It landed with a thud on the porch, a black vulture feather tied with a strip of red cloth. "Colton," James muttered, picking up the token. "Heard they were moving into the territory. Friends of Blackwood's. Worse, professionals who don't like seeing their kind brought down." He turned to Clara, and she saw the weight settling on his shoulders again. "This is what I meant. It never ends." "No," Clara agreed, taking his hand. "But that's not the point, is it? The point is that we keep standing against it, keep choosing light over darkness, even when the darkness keeps coming." "Especially then?" She led him back inside, away from threats and shadows. "Tomorrow, you'll deal with the Colton gang. You'll protect this town like you always do. But tonight, you're just James, and I'm just Clara. And we have this moment of peace we've carved out of chaos." He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not," she teased gently. "But you're stuck with me now, Sheriff, for better or worse." "Definitely better," he murmured, and proceeded to show her just how much better it could be. The next morning brought reality back with the sunrise. James pinned on his badge with grim determination while Clara made coffee and tried not to think about the vulture feather. "I need to wire the federal marshals," James said. "Let them know about the Colton gang's threat." "And I need to get to work," Clara replied. She'd taken over managing the boarding house, giving Abigail more time for her seamstress work. Life doesn't stop for threats. "No," James agreed, kissing her goodbye. "But Clara, be careful. They might try to get to me through you." "Let them try," she said fiercely. "I'm not the same frightened girl who hid in a root cellar. They come for me. They'll find Clara McGraw ready for them." His smile held pride and worry in equal measure. "That's what scares me most." As Clara walked to the boarding house, she noticed the town's mood had shifted. Word of the midnight threat had spread, and people moved with the wary alertness that had served them well against Blackwood. Miguel nodded to her from across the street, hand near his gun. "Misses." Patterson swept her porch with a rifle propped nearby. Silver Creek had learned vigilance the hard way. Days passed with tense normalcy. James worked with his deputies to fortify the town's defenses, while Clara managed the boarding house and helped coordinate the Women's Auxiliary, a group formed after Blackwood's attack to ensure the town's families could defend themselves. Then, a week after the wedding, A stranger arrived on the afternoon stage, well-dressed, soft-spoken, with the manner of an Eastern businessman. He took a room at the boarding house, signing the register as Mr. Josiah Hartwell. Investment opportunities. Clara's instincts prickled, but she showed him to his room with professional courtesy. That evening, she mentioned him to James over dinner. Investment opportunities. James mused. After what happened with Blackwood, that's either very brave or very stupid. Or very calculated, Clara suggested. What if he's not here to invest but to test our defenses, see how strong we really are? James set down his fork. You think he's Colton's scout? I think we can't afford to assume he's not. They were interrupted by urgent knocking. Deputy Carson stood on their porch, breathless from running. Sheriff, we got trouble. That Hartwell fellow, he's at the saloon, buying drinks and asking questions. Lots of questions about you, about the town's defenses, about Mrs. McGraw. James strapped on his guns. Let's go have a chat with Mr. Hartwell. I'm coming too, Clara said, checking her derringer. Clara. We do this together. Remember, partners. The saloon was crowded, but a circle of empty space surrounded Hartwell at the bar. Up close, Clara could see what the soft manner concealed hard eyes that missed nothing, hands that stayed near his coat despite seeming relaxed. Mr. Hartwell, James said pleasantly. Enjoying our hospitality? Indeed. Sheriff, such a friendly town. Everyone's been so informative. His smile held edges. Especially about your recent heroics. Quite the story, former gunman turned protector. Just doing my job. Speaking of which, what's yours exactly? Investment opportunities covers a lot of ground. Oh, I represent various interests. Men who see potential in growing communities. Hartwell's gaze shifted to Clara. Mrs. McGraw, isn't it I heard about your own heroics? Quite remarkable for a woman. Not really, Clara replied coolly. Defending your home is natural for anyone, man or woman. Of course. Still, it must have been terrifying. All that violence, that loss. His voice held false sympathy. Makes one wonder if it was worth it. Justice is always worth it, Clara said firmly. Justice. Hartwell savored the word like wine. Such a flexible concept. One man's justice is another's revenge. Wouldn't you say? Sheriff. James stepped closer, his presence suddenly menacing despite his calm tone. I'd say justice is pretty clear, protecting the innocent, stopping the guilty. Simple as that. Nothing's ever that simple. Hartwell stood, straightening his coat. But I can see this isn't the right investment climate for my clients. I'll be leaving on tomorrow's stage. Probably wise, James agreed. Hartwell paused at the door. Give my regards to your deputies. Sheriff, all 3 of them. And to the 12 vaqueros at the Lazy J. And to the 17 armed households on the east side of town. His smile was sharp as a blade. Like I said, everyone's been so informative. After he left, the saloon stayed quiet. Clara felt ice in her veins. Hartwell had mapped their entire defense in one day. He's reporting back, she said quietly, telling Colton exactly how to hit us. Let him, James replied, loud enough for the room to hear. Silver Creek's faced worse than the Colton gang. We're ready for whatever comes. But that night, as they lay wakeful in their bed, Clara could feel the tension in her husband's body. How many will die this time? He asked the darkness. How many good people will pay for my past? Your past didn't bring Colton here. Greed did. Violence did. The same things that have plagued this land since the first settlers arrived. Clara found his hand under the covers. You're not responsible for evil men's choices. James, you're only responsible for standing against them. And if I fail, if I can't protect you, protect the town, then we'll fail together. But I don't think we will.
She turned to face him in the darkness. You know what I see when I look at Silver Creek now? A community that's been forged in fire. We're not the same scattered, frightened people we were before Blackwood. We're united. We're strong. Strong enough to face professional killers. Strong enough to try. That's all anyone can do. James pulled her close, and she felt some of his tension ease. When did you become the wise one in this marriage? Someone has to be, she teased gently. Then, more seriously, we knew this wouldn't be easy. Peace never is, especially not out here. But we also knew it was worth fighting for. You're worth fighting for, he murmured against her hair. This life we're building, it's worth everything. They held each other as the night wind whispered around their small house, carrying the scent of sage and distant rain. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Colton gang would come, as would others after them. The price of peace in the West was eternal vigilance. But tonight, Clara McGraw lay in her husband's arms and felt something her younger self could never have imagined: contentment. Not the absence of danger, but the presence of hope. Not the end of fighting, but the knowledge that she no longer fought alone. The ghosts of her family still rode with her, would always ride with her. But now they were joined by the living a husband who understood darkness, a community that had chosen courage, a future worth defending. She'd sought justice and found it. She'd sought revenge and transcended it. And in the process, she'd discovered something more valuable than either a reason to keep living, keep fighting, keep choosing love over fear. The desert night stretched endless outside their window, full of dangers and possibilities in equal measure. But Clara McGraw, once Clara Bell, no longer faced it alone. She had a partner, a purpose, and a promise that tomorrow, whatever it brought, would find them standing together. In the wild heart of the West, where justice came at the price of blood and peace was won one day at a time. That was enough. More than enough, it was everything. The stars wheeled overhead, ancient and eternal, bearing witness to another small human victory against the darkness. And in a little house on Elm Street, two wounded souls continued the long, necessary work of healing together. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this Wild West tale from. Please share in the comments below where you're listening and what you thought of Clara M. and James's journey. Don't forget to subscribe to Wild West Night for more stories of love, courage, and justice in the American frontier. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like and hit that hype button to help more listeners discover these tales of the Old West. Your support means the world and helps keep these stories alive. Until next time, partners.